Welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. This week we begin our deep dive into 1966, picking up where episode 280, U.S. Pop Culture 1965, Part 9, left off. Like any year, 1966 has its share of tragedy. To me, it also seems like the year when the world begins bursting into color. Whether it's pop art, op art, color fields, fashion, photography, or television, there seems to be new and brighter color everywhere. Even the lyric to arguably the Beach Boys' greatest record, released this year, begins with the line, "I love the colorful clothes she wears." This week we'll talk about music and news in the first 3 months of the year, January, February, and March. Of course, there's a lot to get to. Let's get started with the first album chart of the year, January 1st, 1966. Of course, a lot of the records in the chart had also been there in the last week of 1965. We talked about those in episode 280, so I'll go over them pretty quickly here. Whipped Cream and Other Delights by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass is still relatively early in its long chart run. It's currently in the last of 6 weeks at number 1. It'll return to number 1 for an additional 2 weeks beginning February 19th. The Sound of Music is at number 2. It's another album continuing a long chart run that we discussed earlier. It had been number 1 for 2 weeks beginning November 30th, 1965. The comedy album Welcome to the LBJ Ranch is in the last of 3 weeks at number 3. Going Places, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass's big hit follow-up to Whipped Cream and Other Delights is at number 4. It'll spend 5 weeks at number 1 beginning April 16th. December's Children and Everybody's by the Rolling Stones is at number 5. It'll go to number 4 for 3 weeks beginning next week, January 8th. The Beach Boys' Party album kicks off 1966 at its number 6 peak. The Best of Herman's Hermits is at number 7. It had peaked at number 5 last week. Harem Scarum by Elvis Presley is in the first of 2 weeks at its number 8 peak. My Name is Barbara 2 by Barbra Streisand is at number 9. It had spent 2 weeks at number 2 beginning back on November 27th, 1965. At number 10 is the only album new to the top 10 this week, My World by Eddie Arnold. It'll spend the next 3 weeks at number 7. Turning to top 10 singles as the year begins, The Sounds of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel reaches number 1 this week. It might have stayed at number 1 longer if not for the Beatles releasing a new single, We Can Work It Out, which jumped to number 2 this week and will go to number 1 next week, staying there until January 22nd when The Sounds of Silence will go back to number 1, and then returning to number 1 for 1 more week on January 29th. All the rest of the songs in the top 10 had been there in the last week of 1965. I'll recap them pretty quickly. I Got You, I Feel Good by James Brown is in the second of 3 weeks at number 3. Turn, Turn, Turn by the Byrds is at number 4. Over and Over by the Dave Clark 5 is at number 5. Let's Hang On by the Four Seasons is at number 6. Fever by the McCoys is at number 7. The Righteous Brothers' Ebb Tide is at number 8. England Swings by Roger Miller is at number 9. And rounding out the top 10 is Make the World Go Away by Eddie Arnold. Top 10 singles that will come and go in the first quarter include She's Just My Style by Gary Lewis and the Playboys, which will spend 4 weeks at number 3 beginning January 8th. It'll be behind We Can Work It Out and The Sounds of Silence in the first 3 weeks, and We Can Work It Out and Barbara Ann in the 4th week. Flowers on the Wall by the Statler Brothers will hit number 4 on January 8th. 5 O'Clock World by the Vogues will reach number 4 for 2 weeks beginning January 15th. The Beatles' Day Tripper, the B-side of We Can Work It Out, will peak at number 5 on January 22nd. The Men in My Little Girl's Life by Mike Douglas will spend 2 weeks at number 7 beginning January 22nd. A Must to Avoid by Herman's Hermits will spend 2 weeks at number 8 beginning January 22nd. You Didn't Have to Be So Nice by the Lovin' Spoonful will reach number 10 on January 22nd. The Beach Boys' Barbara Ann, as discussed earlier, will spend 2 weeks at number 2 beginning January 29th. As Tears Go By the Rolling Stones will peak at number 6 on January 29th. The song, written by Jagger, Richards, and Andrew Loog Oldham, had been a hit in the UK for Marianne Faithfull in 1964. Uncharacteristic for the Stones, it's a gentle ballad with strings, and it's easy to see their decision to record it as a response to the success of the Beatles' Yesterday. It's one of 3 songs the Stones will perform on The Ed Sullivan Show on February 13th. The segment features just Mick and Keith with the CBS Orchestra. Of course, Paul McCartney had performed Yesterday solo on acoustic guitar with the orchestra on the show back in September. The full group will perform last summer's hit, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. When the Stones did the song on ABC's Shindig, some of the words had been censored. Here, the CBS censors allow the lyrics uncut. The Stones also present their brand new single, 19th Nervous Breakdown, which had been released only 2 days earlier. It's a rockin' tune that proves, despite the success of As Tears Go By, the Stones aren't going soft. Getting back to hit singles, Jenny Take a Ride by Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels will hit number 10 on January 29th. My Love by Petula Clark will go to number 1 for 2 weeks beginning February 5th. No Matter What Shape Your Stomach's In by the T-Bones will hit number 3 on February 5th. It's their version of the catchy instrumental theme from a popular TV commercial for Alka-Seltzer and Acid. Lightning Strikes by Lou Christie will go to number 2 on February 12th. Stevie Wonder had a number 1 hit with Fingertips Part 2 back in 1963. Now he's back in the top 10 with Uptight, Everything's All Right, a song he co-wrote himself with Henry Cosby and Sylvia Moy. It'll go to number 3 on February 12th and stay there for 2 weeks. It'll turn out to be the beginning of a long run of great singles from Stevie Wonder for the rest of the decade. My World is Empty Without You by the Supremes will spend 2 weeks at number 5 beginning February 19th. Crying Time by Ray Charles will go to number 6 on February 19th. As things transpire, despite a long and distinguished career for decades to come, this will be his last time in the top 10. Don't Mess with Bill by the Marvelettes will reach number 7 on February 26th. Working My Way Back to You by the Four Seasons will go to number 9 on March 5th. Listen, People by Herman's Hermits will go to number 3 on March 12th. Elusive Butterfly by Bob Lind will spend 2 weeks at number 5 beginning March 12th. The Bobby Fuller Four singing I Fought the Law, I wonder how that worked out for him, will spend 2 weeks at number 9 beginning March 12th. Turning to albums in the first quarter, the Beatles' groundbreaking new album Rubber Soul had been released in December. In the second week of 1966, it'll leap from number 60 to number 1, where it'll stay for 6 weeks. Some other late 1965 albums reaching their chart peaks early in the year include Frank Sinatra, A Man and His Music, which will spend 2 weeks at number 9 beginning February 19th. And the Four Seasons Gold Vault of Hits, which will spend 2 weeks at number 10 beginning February 19th. September of My Years by Frank Sinatra had been released back in August 1965. It'll spend 2 weeks at number 5 beginning February 26th, helped by the single It Was a Very Good Year reaching the top 30 in January. As we'll see, 1966 will be a very good year for Frank Sinatra and for his daughter Nancy. Roger Miller's golden hits will go to number 6 for 2 weeks beginning February 26th, and Goin' to a Go-Go by Smokey Robinson and the Miracles will reach number 8 on February 26th. The soundtrack to the blockbuster James Bond film Thunderball will go to number 10 on March 5th, and becoming popular in the wake of Whipped Cream and Other Delights and Going Places are 2 earlier albums by Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, South of the Border from 1964, and The Lonely Bull from 1962. Now turning to notable new album releases, Just Like Us by Paul Revere and the Raiders is released on January 3rd. Ballads of the Green Berets by Staff Sergeant Barry Sadler is released on January 20th. Also released in January is Spanish Eyes by Al Martino, which will spend 2 weeks at number 8 beginning April 16th. I Hear a Symphony by the Supremes is released on February 18th. It'll spend 3 weeks at number 8 beginning April 30th. Released on February 28th is If You Can Believe Your Eyes and Ears, the first album by the hot new group The Mamas and the Papas, whose single California Dreamin' is currently climbing the chart at number 8. Crying Time by Ray Charles is released in February. It'll go to number 15 on July 9th. Also released in February is The Best of the Animals, the Dr. Zhivago soundtrack, and Mrs. Miller's Greatest Hits. It's a novelty album featuring Mrs. Miller's deliberately terrible singing of today's hits. Enough people will find it amusing for it to reach number 15 on July 16th. Released on March 15th is Boots by Nancy Sinatra. On March 28th, we get a best of collection from the Rolling Stones, Big Hits, High Tide, and Greengrass. It'll spend 3 weeks at number 3, beginning May 14th. Released on March 28th is the self-titled debut album from the Young Rascals, which will go to number 15 on July 23rd after the single Good Lovin' becomes a number 1 hit. The second album from the Lovin' Spoonful, Daydream, is released in March. It'll go to number 10 on June 11th. The Dave Clark 5's Greatest Hits is also released in March. It'll reach number 9 on April 30th. Color Me Barbara by Barbra Streisand is released in March. On March 30th, CBS will air Barbra Streisand's second TV special, a one-woman show of the same name. Unlike her first special, which was in black and white, Color Me Barbara is, appropriately, in color. As you can see, they made sure you noticed. The special will help the album go to number 3 on April 30th for 2 weeks. Hold On by Herman's Hermits is released in March. It's the soundtrack for their upcoming movie. It'll spend 2 weeks at number 14, beginning May 28th. And finally, released in March, The Shadow of Your Smile by Johnny Mathis, which will go to number 9 on June 25th. On January 21st, Beatle George Harrison marries actress model Pattie Boyd in England, leaving Paul as the last single Beatle. And in other news in the first quarter, on February 1st, silent film comedian, writer, and director Buster Keaton passes away at the age of 70. In the 1920s, he was responsible for some of the most highly regarded comedy films ever made. Lately, he had been appearing as a support player in AIP beach party movies. On March 16th, Gemini 8 is launched with a mission to dock with an unmanned target vehicle. During the docking procedure, the spacecraft loses attitude control, jeopardizing the safety of the crew. Astronauts Neil Armstrong and David Scott are forced to abort the mission. It's the first critical systems failure on a U.S. manned spaceflight. The astronauts return safely to Earth after slightly less than 11 hours in space. And that'll give us a start on 1966. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll join me next time when we'll look at television, movies, and what our friends the Beach Boys were up to in the very eventful first 3 months of the year. Meanwhile, have a great week. Please hit like if you don't mind and subscribe if you haven't. Thanks for watching. Bye.